Hi guys, welcome. Dan here from the Magic Junk Drawer, and I got a great question today from a viewer. And the question was, I've asked the same question to so many different tarot readers and I keep getting different answers. Who do I believe and why does that happen? So this has happened to me too. And I'm going to tell you that in my experience, I started seeing tarot readers, I think the first time I was 12 or 13. We had a flea market not too far from where I lived, and there was a tarot reader at the flea market, and that's where it started. I had always been drawn to spirituality, things, religion, Ouija boards. I always found stuff like that fascinating. So it was no shock when I found tarot cards interesting, and I wanted to know, and I wanted to go see these people. So that was the first time. And then there were times in my life where I wasn't going as often, and then there were times where I was going constantly. So the first woman, so Laurie, let me explain. The first place that I found that really resonated with me, like these people I felt were giving me something to go on, and it was more than just vague things. First woman that we saw was a woman named Cecilia, and we all thought she was really good. We went to this place, which was it was like on one street, and it was the kind of thing where we didn't go all the time. If we had nothing to do and they were open, we would go in there, but I would go in with a lot of my friends. So it wasn't, I mean, there were a lot of us that were involved in this. And what I used to like about her is that I felt like, especially if I was going through a hard time with a relationship, if it was over and the person wasn't coming back, she was very honest about it. And I felt like it helped me shut the door on the relationship. I had been off and on with somebody who was in the Navy, but he wasn't when I first started seeing him. And he was one of these people that was in and out of my life a lot. I would hear from him and then I wouldn't, and he would disappear and he would show up and all this kinds of nonsense. But when it was finally over, she was like, I don't see the sailor here. He's not here. And I was able to shut the door and move on, which is what I liked. I felt like I needed that. I needed somebody to tell me that. And it helped me. So that it served its purpose. Now, it was after that. Where, I mean, all right, at this place, okay, everybody was, the rates were much cheaper, and there was one person and the rate was like twice as expensive. But she was never there. She was never there whenever we popped in. And you know me, I was going to try her because I wanted to know why she was so much more expensive. She was never there. So one day we go and the place isn't there anymore. And we were like, oh shit, what happened? So we had no one to contact, nowhere to find these people, and we let it go. But still, if there was somebody with a sign that said tarot reader or psychic, we went. Me and my friends went, or at least me and one of my friends. We would hunt them down, we would find them, we would get in there. So one night, I remember it was like a rainy night in December. I was probably out Christmas shopping. I had just broken up with my boyfriend at the time, and I was really upset, or we had a big fight or something. I think we broke up. And I'm driving down a side street in the same town, and I see that the place didn't close down, they moved. So I see the place, and I'm like, oh, damn, and they're open. I was alone, had nobody with me, and I go into the place, and there isn't anybody in there. It was a day during the week. And there's the woman, the expensive woman. And she had no idea I was coming. I had no idea that I was coming. This is way before Facebook. This is before she could have investigated me. She didn't know my last name. She knew nothing about me. And before I even sat down and shuffled the cards, she said to me, who's Tom? Is that your boyfriend? And I was like, yeah. And she's like, you just broke up? And I was like, yeah. And she's like, well, you're getting back together. I was sold from that point. So, from that point on, she's really been the only person that I've seen. To be honest, I have Years ago, I did try California Psychics and I called several of them. Their prices are incredibly expensive. I just looked into it recently and some people are getting like 15 bucks a minute. It's insane. But if you want to talk about comparing people and what one person says versus another, this is what's happened in my experience. So while I consistently saw this same person, that's probably going back almost 20 years now, maybe even more. I always take what she says because she's given me such specifics and she's always been right before. But the problem is that time is very elusive. Like it's very hard to hone into something time-wise. So if you're asking a question like, say for example with Tom when I was dating him, if I had gone, she said to me, you're getting back together. Now, did we really get back together? This is what happened. We were still seeing each other. We were still hanging out. We were still spending time together. He was still staying at my place. But we weren't really together. He still did his own thing. Like we didn't have the same relationship that we had previously had. So she would say to me, listen, you're doing all the same things that you did when you were a couple. You're pretty much back together. He's not seeing anyone else and neither are you. But to me, I didn't feel like it was the same relationship. Now, if I had gone to see somebody else and they saw a breakup and they saw how I was feeling, they may not have predicted him coming back. Now, from that December night, Tom and I had gone off and on and back and forth and upside down and sideways, probably for the next 2 years after that. So how do you say that somebody is not back with you, but they are with you, but it's upside down and sideways, but there's still, like you're still having that same kind of relationship? Now, it was up for discussion as to whether or not our relationship was the same, but he was still in my life. Like, for example, now he's not in my life. So now if we were to ask that question, it would be different. It's very hard to hone in on things that require timing. So here's another thing that she would say to me. Well, let's go back to the sailor, right? The sailor. So the sailor would sometimes disappear for 6 months. I wouldn't hear from him. So if I had gone in and asked, what's going on with the sailor, and she said to me, he's not around you, I don't see him. Now, this would have been the other lady. She would have been right, because 6 months is a long time not to see or hear from somebody. And then if I would have gone in and she would say to me, it looks like the sailor's popping up, she would have been right again. So when you're living the 6 months without somebody and they're showing up as not being there, that's right. But it's also wrong because at some point they're going to show up again. So that's where I come back to where I always say, I never use 2 words, never or forever, because things change. People show up again, people disappear again. This is what happens. Now, all of our recordings, all of our sessions would be recorded. And what we would do was after our sessions, me and my best friend, we would go somewhere, have coffee, and listen to the tapes. Like this was back when people used cassette tapes and you had the cassette player in the car. And the woman used to say all the time, girls, don't sit around and analyze my tapes. You're going to drive yourself crazy. Which, looking back on it, yes, we drove ourselves crazy, but it made a lot of sense because things don't always come out in chronological time. So she could say to me, you're going to get a new job, you're going to meet a Sagittarius, you're going to go on vacation, and then I would go on vacation. There was no Sagittarius. And I was like, what, like I would be driving myself nuts. Oh, well, did she say Sagittarius? You just drive yourself crazy talking about this stuff and thinking about it. What she used to say is take the tape, throw it in a drawer, and don't listen to it for 3 or 6 months. Then go back and listen to it and see what happened. So at the end of the day, everyone is always right and everyone is always wrong. Because when you're asking, especially questions that could be on the horizon, am I going to hear from him next Tuesday? Nope, I don't see communication here. But what if he calls next Wednesday? Well, would I have been wrong? Well, he didn't call on Tuesday, he called on Wednesday. So it's very hard when it comes to certain things. Like, it sounds like things should be cut and dry, but they're not. They're not. Like, you could get a job, and like work at the job for 2 weeks and quit, or the place could go out of business. It's still going to show up that you're getting a new job. You see what I'm saying? So, and especially if you're asking yes and no type questions. And it's very hard when it comes to timing. Will I get a job by the end of the year? Well, what happens if it shows no, because by December 31st, you don't have a new job, but on January 7th, you get a new job? Well, January 7th, a week late, okay, it's not that big of a deal in the scheme of things. And when you look back on it, when you're dealing with it in the moment, yeah, it's like, well, she said by the end of the year, and now here it is January 2nd, and I don't have a job yet. So I get it. I get the frustration, and I've been there, and I have seen so many different readers. I could tell you the good ones from the bad ones. I can tell you people. There was one woman who I saw, who I used to talk to on the phone. I didn't talk to her often because, first of all, she was highly reputable. I'm not going to give her name. I saw her on TV. I researched her. Her prices were not outrageous. But what I felt with her, and this is really funny, I felt like whatever was going on in her life affected my reading. So for example, the first time I spoke to her, I was dating someone who was significantly younger than me. So was she. And things were going well for her. So she predicted for me that things were going to go great. The next time I spoke to her, things weren't going so hot for her. Same thing for me. That's what she told me. The last time I spoke to her, she told me that I was going as a receptionist, and I was going to be paid so much money that I wouldn't be able to turn it down. And when I said to her, no, I'm going to teach yoga, that's what I want to do, she said that there was no way I would ever teach yoga and do it as a living, and that I was going to have to settle for this job because the pay would be too good, just like she had to settle for the job that she took. That's what she told me. And I never spoke to her again. I didn't speak to her that many times, but I remember that she sort of pushed me to write a testimonial for her. I didn't even write it. She wrote it. And when I was on the phone with her. And I was like, you know what? I'm not talking to this woman anymore because I know myself. And I know that you could offer me $1 million a year, and I'm not going to make a commute into New York City to answer telephones. That job is not for me. I'm not putting on pantyhose. I'm not putting on a business suit. That's not me. I'm not taking a job like that. And when she said, well, the money is going to be too good, I would rather work for less money up the street from my house. I don't want to do that. I would never. I've had friends that commuted into the city, 2.5 hours in, 2.5 hours out. That's not happiness. Spending my whole life on a train is not happiness. So when it got to the point where I was almost arguing with her, I was like, you know what? I don't know what's going on with this woman, but this is not legit. So I think you have to find the person too that resonates with you. The woman I see, we have some kind of a crazy connection. I mean, our connection has been bizarre over the years. I mean, people that have popped up in between us and people that she never knew that I knew that would show up in my readings. Like, there would be no way for her to know that. Like, somebody that my father dated 20 years ago, like, how would she know that? Or my grandfather's last name, or the fact that, I mean, there's just too many coincidences for us not to have this connection. So that could be why her and I, or she can read me so well and be very accurate with me. I can't vouch for everyone because somebody could go to her and not think that she told them much. But if you're getting a lot of different answers from a lot of different people, the reasons could be, number one, the person may not be good at what they do. Number two, they could be not removing themselves emotionally from the reading. Number three, they could be reading a time frame that is different from somebody else. So their time frame may show, well, it's nothing on the horizon for the next 6 months, right? So, and it's not like 6 months pops up, you don't know. It just says, like I'll just say, I'm not seeing it on the horizon now. And that's when I'll say to people, but let's ask this question again in a couple of months or a couple of weeks, because that could change. Because things change and we are in control of our own destiny. So if you want something to happen, you have to focus on what you want and banish all the doubts that are around it. So you want this job? Stop thinking you're not good enough. Stop thinking you're not going to get it. Stop thinking that everyone else is better at it and you'll get the job. So it's really trying to find, first, you got to find a reader that resonates with you. That's number one. Number two, you have to focus on what it is that you want and how you're going to make it happen, regardless of what anyone else says. And know that things are always changeable. I have seen so many in my day, and some of them, like, for example, if I wasn't hearing from somebody for like 6 months, and somebody said, no, you're not going to hear from him, they're not really wrong if I haven't heard from them, because I didn't hear from them in 6 months. But what if on the 7th month and the second day, the person contacts me? This is what I'm saying, it's very hard. Like the other day I mentioned travel. Almost every time when I go in there, she says to me, you got a little trip coming here. That's what she always says. You got a little trip coming here. And I'm always like, I haven't been anywhere in 4 years. Look, eventually I'm going to go somewhere, because that's the truth. Eventually I'm going to go somewhere. That's just destiny. We're all going to go somewhere at some point, whether it's one night at the Jersey Shore, I'm going to go somewhere. But in the last 4 years, I haven't gone anywhere, meaning I haven't gone to a location and slept in a hotel in 4 years. Well, longer than 4 years, because the last time I went on vacation was to my father's house. So I was at his house. But the point being, you're going to go on a trip eventually. Now, to hone in on the specific trip you're asking about, like I said, what happens if you have the trip booked and you're scheduled to go on November 1st? Something comes up, you cancel it. Now it looks like I'm not going on the trip. Yeah, but then you reschedule it for December 15th. Now you're going on the trip again. You see what I mean? Like, it's very hard to, that's why I'm like, I would never use words never. I never use the word forever, because things change. Another story was, she told me this story about a girl who she read for, who she said to her, she said, you're getting engaged. So the girl took it like, well, I'm getting engaged, I'm getting married, and I can do whatever I want. That's what the girl felt when she was told that. So the girl cheats on her boyfriend. First they get engaged. She cheats on her boyfriend, and then he dumps her. So she goes back and she's like, you told me I was getting married. She's like, no, I told you were getting engaged. I didn't tell you that you could do whatever you wanted because it was written in stone and you weren't going to get caught. I said you were getting engaged and you got engaged. So be careful with what you read into things, right? Because sometimes we read into things. But also, you can't take it as it's written in stone and that you can't screw it up, because we can screw things up. Screw things up all the time. So there's a lot of reasons why you can get different answers from different people, different time frames, different timelines. My suggestion would be to stick to one or two people that you really resonate with and go with them and work with the law of attraction so that you can get what you want, no matter what anyone says, because you can have it. You can have whatever you want. I hope that helps. And if it's not clear, comment below and I'll try to clarify it. It can be difficult. All right, guys. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon. Bye.